Mindful eating is one of the fastest yet most effective changes you can make to your life starting right now in order to get a better handle on your diet and lifestyle. And if you think that this is some sort of pseudo-spiritual nonsense that shouldn't interest you, I promise you it's not. So keep watching. Now let's start with what mindful eating actually is. And a bit of a disclaimer before we start. If you go and search for the term mindful eating right now, you're probably gonna come across a book called Savor, Mindful Eating, Mindful Life. This book was written by, and I deeply apologize for probably butchering their names, Dr. Lilian Chung and Buddhist spiritual leader Thich Nhat Hanh. I think I pronounced it well. Now, from my understanding, this book sort of brought the idea of mindful eating into the forefront of the nutritional behavior niche. And this book educates readers on how to get into mindful eating by following the 7 tenets of the book. It's a decent read, and I'm gonna link to the website if anybody wants to buy it. However, this is not the idea of mindful eating that I'm going to talk about today. Instead of looking at it from that specific point of view, I wanna go over what mindful eating is as a general concept and then give you my personal tips on why and how you should apply some of its principles into your lifestyle. So back to what mindful eating actually is. Mindful eating, in its most fundamental form, is simply the act of paying attention while you're eating. Sounds simple enough, but in the modern world, unfortunately, it's become more and more common to leave eating as an afterthought. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not to say that people don't actually care about their diets. They do, oftentimes to a fault. But even if you're eating something healthy, how often are you actually paying attention to the eating process? Pretty much everyone nowadays is eating while doing something else, whether that's checking their phones, working, driving, watching YouTube videos. And you know, it makes sense. The modern world is all about time efficiency. Nobody ever has enough time. And you might be wondering, why is this important? Assuming that I'm eating healthy, why does it matter if I'm doing something else like watching Netflix as I'm eating? Well, to answer that, let's take a look at why many people struggle with eating healthy and staying at a low body weight. 99.9% of people's struggles with weight management and healthy eating can be boiled down to bad nutritional and lifestyle habits. I don't think many people would disagree on that. And these habits can be anything from eating unhealthy food to snacking to overeating, etc., etc. Many of these unhealthy habits are perpetuated or oftentimes even caused by mindless or distracted eating. Let's take overeating as an example. There are many reasons as to why a person might overeat. One of those reasons? Distractions. Let's be real. How many of you have put on like a 20-minute episode of a series or a 15-minute YouTube video, sat down to eat, finished your meal before the video had ended, and so either refilled your plate or just grabbed something else to snack on as you were waiting for that video to finish? I know I've done it, and I know you've probably done it. Another example is snacking. Sure, it's really common for people to mindlessly snack in front of the TV or the cinema or whatever, in front of watching some sort of media content. But it's also common to snack while doing chores in the house or while driving or while at work. And those calories can add up incredibly quickly. Maybe we've heard that approximately 75% of all our eating is driven by emotional reasons. Now, I don't know if that exact number is true because I haven't actually found any research to point to that specific number. But what I can tell you is that, yes, for the most part, people eat for emotional reasons and not biological cues. Emotions drive a huge percentage of our eating habits. That includes what we eat, how much we eat, when we eat. These are all affected and oftentimes driven by our emotional state. And for a shameless plug, I did make a video about emotional eating and how you can prevent it. I'm gonna link that video with a card as well as in the description. Now, where does mindful eating play a role in all of this? Well, by following some basic principles of mindful eating, we can start to develop a better relationship with food. One in which emotions and impulses don't have that much of a control on our eating behavior. I mean, think about it. If you could disassociate your personal feelings and emotional state from your eating patterns, dieting would become much easier. All this might sound a little bit too phony for your tastes. But it's really not. It's just a set of principles that can help you get a better handle on your nutrition. Alright, so what principles am I talking about? The overarching principle is that you should simply be paying attention when you're eating. Now, I realize that this is not always possible, but please try and stick to that rule as best as you can. Sure, you might have some times where you're gonna go out for food, or maybe you have to squeeze in a quick lunch as you're working, but for the most part, you wanna make sure that you're paying attention to the eating process. That's the general principle. And there are 3 rules that you can use to enforce that principle. The first one is, naturally, you wanna avoid distractions while you're eating. Don't check your phone, don't work, don't watch Netflix, don't watch YouTube, just pay attention to the eating process. The second rule is to pay attention to your biological cues, which is only possible if you're actually paying attention to your meal. You've probably heard a lot of people say to stop eating when you're about 80% full, and that's absolutely true. You wanna stop eating before you're full. You don't need to be full to be satisfied. And this is exactly what distracted eating prevents you from doing. Because your mind is concentrated elsewhere, you're not paying attention to your biological cues, and thus you're eating much more food than what you actually need to sustain yourself. And the third and final rule is to eat with intent and treat everything that you're eating as a meal. Let me explain. By eating with intent, we don't necessarily mean that you need to eat for a specific goal, like losing weight or building muscle. Although if you do want to do that, that's great. But eating with intent means that you have complete knowledge and awareness of why, what, and when you're eating. It essentially means that you're not eating mindlessly. You're not eating because you're bored or you just happen to see a cookie on the counter, you just pick it up. And this doesn't necessarily apply only to healthy meals either. You can have a cheat meal, you can have something that's more unhealthy, but you can still eat that with intent. Let's say, for example, that you have a huge craving for chocolate. You can still eat that chocolate with intent. You know you're craving it, you know you're gonna go grab it and eat it, and that's fine. What we don't want is you eating mindlessly. Be deliberate with what and when you're eating. Treating everything that you eat, even a smaller snack, as a meal is sort of a way to tell yourself that everything you eat has a purpose, even if that purpose is simply to satisfy a craving. Then the good thing about mindful eating and its principles is that you can apply it to pretty much any type of eating pattern, be it 5 to 6 small meals a day, intermittent fasting, keto diet, you name it. So let's take a quick recap. The overarching principle is to pay attention to the eating process, with the 3 rules that you want to apply to yourself being: don't have distractions, listen to your internal biological cues, and eat with intent and consider everything that you're eating a meal. You can think of dieting as a battleground, right? On one side, you have your goals and your logic, and on the other side, you have your emotions, your impulses. And these 2 sides are in a constant war. Sticking to mindful eating is essentially giving your side of logic and your goals better gear and weapons, right? That was a terrible analogy, but I hope you get the point. So that was the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, perhaps even subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.